I think we should have a law at the federal level that would say after 15 weeks, no abortion on demand, except in cases of rape, incest, to save the life of the mother. We have the ability in Washington to speak on this issue if we choose. I have chosen to speak.
Despite endless polls showing that forcing women to give birth against their will is a losing issue, we've got a handful of Trump Republicans who are going all in on restricting the reproductive freedom of women across the country. The handful of politicians who want to turn America basically into Gilead from The Handmaid's Tale originally thought it would be a good idea, to leave women's access to abortion for state legislatures to decide. And we'll talk about that messaging pivot as soon as we get a chance. And later, advocate, Pensacola native, and registered nurse Franscine Mathis makes her We Make Florida screen share debut to discuss why she's running to represent District 1 in the Florida House of Representatives. We've got a jam-packed show, but we begin screen share with the truth. Freedom and safety are on the ballot in November. Economic freedom, reproductive freedom, the freedom to have a safe and secure home to raise your families, they're all on the ballot this November. In a press conference that didn't go as well as he thought it would go, South Carolina Republican Senator and alleged closet queen, if you ask me, Lindsey Graham, got on TV with that skin and that jawline and told America that he knows better than you and all the women in your family when it comes to birth control, healthcare access, and family planning. But amid the social outcry as a result of the Supreme Court overturning 50 years of settled law, we've got Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, and Rick Scott, who both said, you know what, Supreme Court, hold my beer, because we ain't done yet. Graham and a handful of Trump Republicans hinted that they have enough votes to permanently end a woman's right to choose and a woman's ability to make decisions for her own body and her own health. They don't, but what they do have is a PhD in distraction. And what we know is that regardless of where you live, what you look like, how much money you make, we all deserve the freedom to make the best healthcare decisions for ourselves and our families. The decision of when and even if, quite frankly, to become a parent is one of the most important many of us will make in life. But today, we've got a handful of politicians that are set on destroying our freedoms, undermining our rights, and endangering our futures. But it's important to understand why they do it. Not just talk about what the opposition does, but why they do it. Because when you explain why they do it, it allows people to understand how we get from having people make a different decision than what they're ordinarily accustomed to making. So, because while we're fighting with our neighbors over culture wars, mean tweeting, trolling people on Facebook, there's a handful of wealthy political donors and the powerful politicians who are defunding our schools, awarding kickbacks to wealthy real estate developers, and funneling our tax dollars, which are basically meant to improve our power grid, our roads, our bridges, and funneling that money towards billionaire corporations. At the end of the day, what we know is that all of us, me, you watching, we make up America, and we know what keeps us safe. So together, we can ensure that all of us, no matter who we love, where we come from, how much money we make, we can decide if, when, and how we grow our families. And we can elect new leaders who will put all of us on a path of economic and environmental freedom. Now, we were supposed to have Franscine Mathis on today. She was on, actually, and she is not here anymore. So what we may do is throw to commercial and see where she went, because she was here. Back in a moment.
Americans across our races, backgrounds, and genders value our freedom. But an authoritarian faction at home and abroad is stoking fear to hold on to power. We must protect our freedom to vote freedom to decide whether and when to grow our families, and freedom for our kids to learn from our past and shape a better future. We can elect new leaders who respect our freedom. Way to Win Action Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
If MAGA Republicans get their way, abortion will be banned nationwide with no exceptions. Medicare and Social Security will end in 5 years with no replacement. Elections will be decided by politicians with no regard for your vote. If MAGA Republicans get back in power, your rights, benefits, and freedoms will be in danger. Democrats will protect your rights, and the only way to stop MAGA Republicans is to vote for Democrats. FFPAC is responsible for the content of this ad.
Yes, I'm a believer, always have been. And I tell my granddaughters, take care of yourselves. You never know, but it takes all sorts to make a world. And it's not my place to tell a woman if she can have an abortion or not. That is a decision between her doctor, and God. And that is why I am voting for Democrats.
FFPAC is responsible for the content of this ad.
4 out of 5 Americans agree. Abortion should be a decision between a woman and her doctor, not politicians. But Republican judges just took your rights away, and they're only getting started. Millions of women will be unable to get the life-saving care they need. It could be someone you love. It could be you. Our rights, our freedoms, and our futures are at stake. Let's fight for them.
Now, we still do not have Francine. If anybody knows where Francine went, please let us know so that she can get connected back to this feed. She just kind of disappeared. But while we're waiting for her, hopefully she does come back. While we're waiting, what I would encourage all of you who are watching to do is go ahead and, if you have any questions for me, if you want me to answer anything, if you have questions that you think would help propel this show and fill in some time while we're waiting for Francine to hook back in, just let me know. So, but we're going to finish. I'm just going to give a rant about reproductive freedom. So what we have seen in the last, basically in the last maybe 2 to 3 months since Roe v. Wade has been overturned by the Supreme Court is we've really seen like an activist court that has overturned 50 years of settled law, judicial precedent. And what's even more frustrating is that a lot of the justices, when they testified and when they were questioned by the Senate, because the Senate has the right to confirm any of the appointees by the president. And so when they did this, now people are saying that they don't see me. Is that true? Let me know in the comments if you can see me, because people are saying that they don't even see me. If you can see me, let me know. Anyway, well, I'm just going to continue. So most of the judges, including Amy Coney Barrett, which is basically Aunt Lydia from The Handmaid's Tale, they all said that this was settled law and that Roe v. Wade was settled, that there was no need to even address it, and that whatever transpires, if there's any cases that come before the court, that all those cases would basically not change how Roe v. Wade is viewed in the eyes of the court moving forward. But what we know is that they all lied under oath. And so what adds insult to injury is the Chief Justice Roberts said that he doesn't understand why the court has come under question, which we know is a bad faith argument. Let me tell you why the court has come under question. Number one, Clarence Thomas, who was playing around and showing pictures of his pubic hair to Anita Hill during his confirmation. Sorry, kids, if you're watching, but it's kind of what happened. This is what I remember actually from 7th grade. I remember, was it 7th grade? Maybe. I just remember it was doing the first Bush, not the second Bush, the first Bush, which, no pun intended, I'm going to talk about a Bush in a moment. But I remember a friend of mine who I was in elementary school with, who was telling me about how Clarence Thomas showed pictures of his pubic hair to Anita Hill, and why was Anita Hill testifying, which, by the way, George Bush was on that committee. Not George Bush, Joe Biden. So talk about full circle. Joe Biden was on that committee. So that's one. we've got 2 Supreme Court justices who are credibly accused of sexual assault, women who have testified under oath to the things that they have done. So that's one reason. Second reason is Clarence Thomas's wife, Jenny Thomas, basically was all up in the planning of the insurrection. And there's text messages saying that she wants the election overturned, even though she knows that there's no evidence and that the election can only be overturned through force. She has yet to testify before the January 6th committee. They have asked her to, but they have not subpoenaed her, and they need to subpoena her tomorrow, basically. That's another reason. So we've got justices who are compromised, and plus we've got, obviously, overturning a 50-year precedent in this country, with the caveat in the ruling that says we're coming for gay marriage, we're coming for contraception, we're coming for interracial marriage, we're coming for Brown v. Board, because that's not settled law either. And so these are the reasons why we are saying at this point it's time to expand the court. The court is illegitimate, and I forgot one thing too. I forgot that they literally put Aunt Lydia on the court 2 weeks before Joe Biden took office. Now, this is the same Senate under Turtleneck Mitch McConnell that said that in the last year of an election, it was not appropriate to appoint a Supreme Court justice in the last year of an election because we should let the voters decide if they want that president to continue in office. That was why they didn't let Merrick Garland even have a hearing, let alone a vote. None of the senators even met with him, let alone gave him a vote or a hearing. They could have easily given him a hearing and then voted him down if they didn't think he was appropriate for the court. But they didn't even give him a hearing. Amy Coney, Aunt Lydia Barrett, was just like, okay. She gets in 2 weeks after Trump had lost the election and Joe Biden took over. She comes in 2 weeks. So that's another reason why the court is legitimate. So we're not going to have this discussion and be gaslit onto why it's apparent that the court has been compromised. Now, what's also important is that we understand that we are actually in the majority. This is not like a 50-50 debate. People can have their personal, their religious beliefs on what they want to do with Roe v. Wade, whether or not they want to have an abortion. Spoiler, if you don't want to have an abortion, don't have an abortion. But what you can't do is tell other people what to do with their body and tell them and force them into a birth situation that they don't want, that they're not ready for, or they're not able to follow through with. That's what you can't do. And the majority of Americans believe that. The majority, 80%, believe that Roe v. Wade should be the law of the land. So stop arguing with people, is what I say. Why am I going to argue with people, yelling from the nosebleed section? Why do it? We are in the majority, and so there's no need to even have a discussion. Let them scream on their own. Let them do what they need to do, knowing that they have to yell, they have to scream because they don't have the numbers on their side. It's what's necessary in order for them to have relevance, is that they have to be loud, they have to yell and scream from the rafters, they have to post the social media clips that gaslight everyone because they need the media attention because they really don't have the numbers on their side. We do. And so we need to act like we do, which means don't engage, don't feed into the bait, and also demand that we want our government to be a reflection of the majority of America. So with that being said, I may have Francine back, but we're going to throw to commercial and see if that's the case.
Choosing your gender, that is just inappropriate.
Don't say gay.
Critical race theory.
Critical race theory. Critical theory.
Race.
How about 2 million jobs per year for the next 10 years? That's what Joe Biden and the Democrats just delivered. Good-paying jobs, rebuilding our roads, bridges, and country. Democrats and Joe Biden working for you. Way to Win Action Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Hallelujah! Oh, help me sing hallelujah! 60 years ago, this seemed impossible. 15 years ago, this seemed impossible. 10 years ago, this seemed impossible. We decide what's possible. Be a voter.
We still ain't got her back. I don't know where she went, but we still don't have her back. So, listen to this. I'm going to throw to some questions. We've got some questions in the queue, so I'm going to go to those. And Taylor Marie says, what inspired you to start We Make Florida? Okay, so what inspired me to start We Make Florida was I was listening to a podcast, and this podcast was about how to discuss and communicate, because words mean things. So how to discuss and communicate in using different tools at our disposal to communicate information to voters in order to get them to do something different than what they're accustomed to doing. And that was the entire premise of the podcast. And I thought, this is exactly what Florida needs. Florida's on the margins, and I'm getting a text from Francine. Let me actually read it, and let's see what she says. So Francine's not going to be able to make it, but I appreciate her letting me know. Maybe we can reschedule. So I'll finish answering this question. So I thought, let me read more into this, because this is exactly what I think Florida needs. Florida has elections where it's basically the purplest of purple states. We have elections that are sort of like separate. The winners and the losers are separated by like 0.4, 0.3, 0.5%. And so when you're looking at a state of over 30 million people, those tiny little margins can be everything. And so just getting an extra 30,000 people out there to vote for you, it can be the difference between you winning or losing your election. So when I listened to this podcast, and I thought, this is exactly what Florida needs in order to communicate to voters, to get them to consistently vote, number one, in their best interest, and vote for leaders and candidates who are going to serve them in the legislature. So I started learning about the race-class narrative, which is where you combine race and class in order to describe an event, or in order to get people and bring them to the table. So not either or, because what we consistently hear is that let's not talk about race because that drives people away. Well, if you talk about race badly, it does drive people away. So let me give you an example. If you say, housing is unaffordable and that affects, Black and brown communities adversely, or a woman's right to reproductive freedom no longer is available to people in the state of Florida, and that really does affect Black and brown people, or Black and brown women, more than it affects other groups. All those things are true, but when you test that message, it actually does not test well. And so what a lot of people and consultants said, that that just means we shouldn't talk about race because it doesn't test well. Well, the real conclusion is we shouldn't talk about race badly, because when you talk about race badly, that does not test well. And so it's combining race and class in order to show a unified message, in order to get people to not only see themselves as the hero of their own stories, but also know that the outcomes that they want to see will only happen through them. Waiting for someone to deliver on your behalf is not how democracy works. And so in order to get people to see that, you're infusing race and class, and you're starting there. So that was one of the reasons. Plus, Republicans, they have a domination of the media landscape, social media, television, broadcast, radio. They really do dominate, particularly in this area. And you know what? I was kind of like tired of complaining about why I didn't see representation of what I would view as just standard American values. I didn't see that. So I was tired of complaining about not seeing it, and I decided to create it. So that's a long way of answering how I started We Make Florida. There is another question that says, what do you think of the statewide candidates running for office, Charlie Crist, Val Demings? Let's start with Val Demings. I think that she is exactly what not only Florida needs, but what this country needs. I've had the opportunity to hear her speak on several occasions. Not only is she a motivator, but she is someone who is willing to call out the opposition. She's also willing to say why they do what they do. And she is running an election to win. She's not playing. And we really do need her in the Senate. But right now, the Senate is 50-50. And Kamala Harris is the tie-breaking vote. And so in order for anything to happen that does not require a filibuster, we've got to get more senators in there. That sucks, but that is the reality. And so I love the fact that she is defining herself on her terms, because what frequently happens is when you have not defined yourself up as a candidate to consistently and repeatedly say what you're for, then that allows room for your opposition to come and define you. And what we know is that negative campaigning actually draws a lot of attention. And if you have not defined yourself already, then sometimes people will believe the hype that they hear about you from your opposition. So she is not allowing Marco Rubio to define her. Marco Rubio's entire plan is kind of thrown for a loop, because he thought, I'm going to label her socialist, I'm going to label her communist, I'm going to label her radical, I'm going to label her the defunder of the police, when she was actually the police chief of Orlando. She's running as put the chief in office. So everything that he planned on doing, he's not able to do because she's defined herself preemptively, and she's done it very well. So that's what I think of Val Demings. As far as Charlie Crist has run for governor before as a Republican and won. And what he's basically saying is that the Republican Party left him. Now, if you remember in 2008, when President Obama carried the state of Florida, Charlie Crist was the governor at that time. And Charlie Crist said that everyone in line, the lines were long, as we all know, those who had the opportunity to vote for President Obama, we all know the lines were really, really long during that particular election. And so Governor Crist said, you know what? People are in line. If you are in line, then these polls need to stay open until everyone who is in line and gets the opportunity to vote. And he came under a lot of scrutiny for that, particularly by his side, by Republicans who wanted him to close the polls because the polls close at a certain time. And he said, no, if you are in line by 7 o'clock, I don't care how long the lines are, we're going to keep the polls open so that everybody has a chance to participate in their given right, to vote. So he says that ever since then, that was when he realized that this party is going somewhere and I'm not following. There's some other reasons why he says that he left the party, obviously the Tea Party, and now this MAGA crew is just like out the box. And so I've had the opportunity to hear him speak on some occasions. I will tell you, there's a little bit of work that needs to happen there in terms of his public speaking and really engaging with the audience. But from a policy perspective, I have heard several Democrats say that even when he was governor as a Republican, that he was not a bad governor and that he seemed like he governed in the best interest of the people of Florida. And so, yeah, I'm voting for Charlie Crist. And let's pull up another question. What are the chances you will throw your hat in the ring in local politics anytime soon? The jury's out on that. Let me tell you why. in this particular area that I live in Florida, I actually live in the reddest, or at least the second reddest county in the state of Florida. And so part of what my role is to engage people in a way to allow them to see that, number one, Democrats really aren't that much different. We want what's best for everyone. We are the party that is going to fight for you and your families, particularly for your reproductive freedom, your health, and certainly your economic freedom. And that we just want everyone to be able to, go to work, make a decent living, be able to afford some groceries, and God forbid, be home in time to eat the food that you bought. So that's really just run-of-the-mill routine things. That's going to take some time, I believe, in order to get that message consistently to voters. It's going to happen eventually, because what we're going to see is that Republicans cannot continue to deliver a message on God, guns, and abortion. At a certain point in time, people are going to want to know, what are you going to do for me? What are you going to do in order to ensure that when I go to work, I'm bringing home a paycheck that can sustain the livelihood of myself and my family? And at this time, Republicans are running on culture wars. That time is going to end. And so when that time comes, and I believe it is coming, maybe I'll throw my hat in the ring. Thanks for asking. Next question. What is it going to take to get Democrats in the panhandle to vote? Well, couple of things. What we've been seeing consistently is we're trying to shift blue. So shift the panhandle. We know we're not going to win elections and Democrats are not going to be elected overnight. But what we can do consistently, and what we have done, I might add, what we have done is we've decided that every election cycle, 2 to 3% shift towards the blue side. And that has been the goal. And we have seen that goal materialized election cycle after election cycle. And it may take a decade in order to get this area to be a 50-50 competitive district. But it's possible. And it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take canvassing. It's going to take messaging wars. And it's going to take Republicans screwing things up, I think, which they're really, really good at. But here's what they're not good at. I mean, here's what they are good at as well. They're very good at messaging. They're very good at distraction. And so what we've got to consistently do is call out the distraction, but not only what the data shows, what the research shows is that you not only need to call out the hypocrisy, call out the distraction, but you've got to tell the voters why they do it. And usually, 9 times out of 10, they do it as a distraction in order to fill the pockets of special interests, fill the pockets of their wealthy donors. And they are using us as pawns, as a distraction, to keep us fighting amongst each other, to keep Black people fighting with white people, Americans fighting with immigrants. This is the old people fighting with young people. This is the divide and conquer tactic that is routinely used and recycled every election cycle. Now they're trying to turn cis people against trans people. We know the game, which makes it easy to fight if we fight it accurately. And saying why they do it is just as important as saying what they do. All right. Come on, there you go. Tell us about who your TV inspirations are for your show. Who are my inspirations for this show? Well, I must say, the person who is like my TV broadcasting idol is Melissa Harris Perry. I feel as though she rebranded what cable news could look like. She was the queen of Nerdland, is what they called the people who watched her show, and sort of like the space that she created. We called it Nerdland. Dorian was also a guest who guest hosted and was a frequent guest. We call him the Prince of Nerdland. And she was the one who was able to really bring nuance to cable news, not switching topics every, segment, actually carrying over repeatedly over multiple segments the same topic so that it was given the time allotted. And so Melissa Harris Perry is one of my absolute idols. And I think that what she does, she has a podcast now. I think that what she does, I have not seen reproduced to that scale or that degree. Now, I have seen others who are standing on the shoulders of the Melissa Harris Perry show, and that is Joy Reid and Tiffany Cross, who Joy Reid is the host of The Readout. Tiffany Cross is the host of Cross Connection. And I have certainly seen those two particular hosts follow in the footsteps of the wonderfully golden brick road that Melissa Harris Perry laid out. So those are my two inspirations, and I try and use them as a guide for how I, write a script and how I communicate information. So, can you talk about how, let me put this up. It's long. Can you talk about how white women align themselves with white supremacy and therefore vote for Republicans, which is why our reproductive rights and so many other things are under threat? Now, see, you're trying to get me in trouble. You are trying to either get me fired, to get this show pulled off the air, or to get half of America to hate me, or at least half of Florida. That is a very intense question, because here's what I think about it. Now, I don't have the empirical evidence to say that this is indeed fact, but what I think is that the overwhelming majority of white women get their power through proximity to the white men in their lives. And so what we routinely hear is that why won't white women vote in their best interest? And I would argue that voting in alignment with their white husbands is in their best interest, because what we know is the proximity to power is much more attractive than standing up for what is right, even though what is right may be the best thing for you. And so I think it's a proximity to power. Also, white women, I think, view equality and progress as a zero-sum game. If other people get something, then that means I lose. And I am not going to vote in a direction, at least in the majority, vote in a direction that could possibly have my husband lose something and my male children lose something. And so what we have to do is start having white women talking to other white women about why, 55 to 57% of them voted for a man who said that it's totally okay, to grab them by their genitals without their consent. And when you're famous, they let you do it because they like it. That's a conversation that white women got to have. I'm certainly open to fostering that conversation on this show. So if you know any white women who want to have that dialogue on air, I can certainly create the platform in the space in order for that to happen. So before we go, I want to talk about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who has now added child trafficking and the misuse of Florida taxpayers' dollars to the list of political stunts he feels is necessary to run for president. Yes. Yesterday, the QAnon corrupt candidate for governor sent $8 million to Texas Governor Greg Abbott to facilitate a coordinated media stunt to traffic migrants fleeing communist regimes in South America. Now, Ronald Dion Double Chin DeSantis, and I can call him Double Chin because I have a double chin too, and man boobs. He took my tax dollars, your tax dollars, without the consent of the legislature, and paid another politician, who also happens to be running for governor, I may add, to fund a scheme in which they kidnapped mothers, fathers, and their children, lied to them about where they were going, and dropped them off over 1,000 miles away with no directions, no food, no water, nothing. And to add insult to injury, they tipped off producers from Fox News to ensure that the scheme was all caught on tape for future propaganda commercials. Now, Newton's third law of motion says, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Basically a complicated way of saying what goes around comes around. And some people call it, karma. And what we know, karma is a what? I'll let you finish it. So in the words of Celie from The Color Purple, let's run that Color Purple clip, because Celie said it, y'all.
Everything you've done to me, already done to you.
Folks, this man has conducted one of the most inhumane acts, unimaginable. I can't believe it. And he did it in our name. All of us will have to pay for this one way or another, because like Newton said, this type of cruelty put out into the world will not go unanswered. And that wraps up the show. Follow us on We Make Florida on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so that you are informed of when we go live. Special thanks to the Out the House Productions team for putting the show together. Leave comments, tell me what you want in the next show, and I will be happy to bring it to the screen. So, this made me completely nervous as someone who plans everything out to the second. Having the guest drop off the show in the last minute drove me absolutely bananas. I'm sure you all noticed the nervousness, but you know what? Things happen in show business. All right, take care, guys.